where I'm really terrible. You know, I'm down a full class. I try to do a couple of the big rapids in the Locksaw. I try to do house, and I couldn't make the right to left move.
So here's house rapid on the Locksaw, and I go right of this wave just to avoid it, since I'm uncomfortable and unbalanced on that right side anyway. I should be getting my angle earlier, but the second I do get this angle, I'm just fanning back and forth. I can't get the boat to drive. Have to jump to the other side to avoid that rock and hole.
Alright, so when I paddle on my offside, the weakest part is my pry, or leveraging the boat. So I got some basic demonstrations that show this method.
Alright, so here's a paddling tip that I'm using. So I'm actually paddling and then using the pry hand to push off the boat and then kind of bounce. And I'm not necessarily bouncing, but I'm actually just pushing myself off the boat with that hand. And at the same time I'm pushing, that's when the blade is prying against the boat. Here I'm doing it just subtly now, but I'm putting pretty firm pressure. You can see the boat kind of indent. And what that's doing is that's helping the pry to lock in place.
Alright, so that method really worked. You're trying to lift yourself with your pry hand. And what that does is it locks your pry hand in position, and it gives the blade something to push off of as well. So basically, it's just a cool little way to really dial in your pry stroke.
Alright, here's where I'm not doing so good. I'm kind of caught. There's a lot of eddy water, or a lot of swirling boils, also the upstream wind, and I'm kind of fanning back and forth, and that's fine just to get the setup. But I can't even get a first stroke to get any momentum. And so when you're fanning back and forth to get your boat kind of like straight, you still need to have at least one stroke with a good pry to actually get some momentum forward. So here I'm kind of out of that little tricky spot and kind of slowly getting some momentum, pushing down with that hand. And now I'm trying a technique of, and I've done this before, where you take your stroke, brace with that pry hand, and then jump, kind of bounce to the inside of the boat. That releases the kind of the pressure on that tube. So you're driving that tube and then kind of gliding on the tube when you're jumping back to the middle.
Alright, so I'm going to go over the different R1 positions, paddling positions, also sitting positions, so a combination of those two. I'm going to go over all the ones that I use. Some are for power, some are just to remain comfortable through most of the rapids. Alright, so this first one is the position that I feel most comfortable. It puts the least strain on my legs. Here we go.
Alright, so I'm back to my normal position. I'm just kind of showing kind of the setup that is the most comfortable. I'm sitting like, you know, almost centered in the boat, but definitely all the way on that that thwart, and kind of reaching out. Have my feet kind of crossed, no real pressure against anything, just kind of relaxed. All my strokes, what you'll notice is that okay, so there's like the shot of it again, sitting all the way in the middle of the boat.
Alright, this next position is what I use to set up for any major rapid. I used it at the top of big rapids because my feet aren't locked in. And usually the setup, I don't want my feet locked in because I want to be the most maneuverable to get over kind of like big glassy waves about to do a traverse. That keeps me the most mobile. Then if I know that in the rapid I need to lock my feet in, I can do so quickly.
Alright, so here we go. This is my peak power. This is my strong side. Definitely notice how vertical my paddle strokes are. Even when I'm just doing relaxed paddles, I'm just always very vertical with the strokes, so you can notice that. You can see the boat just exaggerate, go back and forth. So I'm paddling one way, and that pry is so strong that it's whipping the boat back.
Yeah, I can get really strong, big strokes, really lean over the boat. My foot farthest in this corner is kind of pushing, it's leveraging up against the side too. So that's kind of where my stability comes from paddling.
Alright, I just want to show you this one more time. I want to point out that the fundamentals of my strong side is the exact same thing I'm trying to learn on my off side. My pry hand ends at the same spot on the boat. I don't have to push off of it because my pry is so strong on this side. But I just really want to hammer home and emphasize that to get better at R1, the place to start is on flat water, just trying to go from one side of the river to the other. Just ferry back and forth across. Even take your boat to a lake and see if you can just paddle around the perimeter of a lake. You know, kind of just picking targets as you go. To get good at R1, it's all about getting your boat full power or solid drive when you have no momentum. Because you're going to be in positions in the river where your boat is either stalled out or in funky water where you need to have a stroke that actually gets you full power in one stroke with a strong pry to keep that momentum going forward. Alright, I want to point out one more thing, and that's how the pry makes the nose of the boat whip back. So if I'm on the left, the pry makes the boat whip back to the left, kind of my starting position. When I take that forward stroke, obviously the nose of the boat's gonna turn to the right. If I just kept taking forward strokes, I'd just kind of spin in a circle. So every time you take a forward stroke, you need to have a pry to get that nose of that boat to move back. And this footage shows that nose of the boat kind of whipping back very aggressively. If you go back and look at my offside, the nose of the boat does go to the right and to the left, or I guess the opposite, but it whips back much more slow because my pry is not as quick and it's not responsive. It doesn't feel as solid. So that's kind of what I'm working up to. So this footage really shows that that nose of the boat gets whipped back, and where it gets whipped back to and where I enter my paddle into the water, the catch of the paddle, that's kind of like setting my angle. So if you notice, every time I enter my paddle and the nose of the boat gets farthest whipped to the left, it's pointing at the same object downstream every single time. And one other thing mentally to think about when you're doing a paddle pry stroke is it seems like you're just moving the boat, the nose of the boat one way and then bringing it back. So in my case, it feels like you're just moving the nose of the boat to the right, and then you're bringing the nose of the boat back to the left. But that's not the case. It's better if you mentally think about it, that you're moving the nose of the boat to the right. Yes, you're also getting the boat to go forward, right? And then your pry, instead of moving the boat back to the left, think of the pry as you're actually moving the back of the boat to the right. So this way you're moving the front of the boat to the right, and then the back of the boat, you're swinging that to the right with the pry. So instead of the boat going back and forth down the river, now your boat's moving to the right, the nose, and then the back kicks to the right. So each time you do that, it's kind of like stair steps. So that is a mental way to think about the R1 paddle pry stroke. That kind of just makes it make sense, and sometimes that little bit helps you get your stroke more dialed in.